"2024 is here. We coming. Let's get after it, fam. This is Football Friday." What is up, everyone? For the last time in 2023, it is I&C Live Football Friday. It is the Iceman, Deion Sanders. That is the coach, Brad Powell. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year, buddy. It's almost 2024. Can you believe it? And by the way, what do you think?
I dig the shades, man. Those are awesome. And yeah, we are closing out 2023. I got to be honest with you. So this is one of the first times I usually make fun of people, not like outwardly, but I judge people who have New Year's resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
And for no good reason. It just I've always thought like it seems so silly. Like if you're really serious about making a change, just do it now. Like
Sure.
why be like I'm gonna wait until January 1st. But I don't know. This year I feel like maybe I'm starting to understand. There's just something about the feeling of a clean slate, a new year, whatever. And yeah, I don't know, man. So I'm almost tempted to maybe come up with a couple of New Year's resolutions or things that I might want to do differently going into the new year.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, it's always good to have perspective, I guess, or have an idea of something that you'd like to do. And I think that though people generally tend to go a little overboard in their resolution, like I'm going to lose 100 pounds this year, and it's like, well, start off with I'd like to get back to a healthy baseline, right? I think that that's fair. Or remember one year I made a New Year's resolution. I want to read 6 books. That's not a lot for a lot of people, but it's like one every 2 months because times get busy. Those are attainable. I always like to make something attainable. And so a New Year's resolution for this show would be, I want to be friggin' entertaining. So you know what? That's easily attainable because we're already doing that.
Yeah, and those shades certainly aren't going to hurt matters. So
Aren't these nice?
they are, man.
These are the Coach Primes, by the way,
I know.
because it's tremendous, wonderful. It's big, best sunglasses I've ever had. And that's, but no, my wife was awesome. She got me these, and I like them so much. The gold pair is on the way. So in 2024, you are going to be seeing full Matty Prime coming out here.
It's great, man. Like it's funny because, yeah, we had prime time, we had prime when he was playing.
Sure.
But like he's reaching a whole new like demographic now, right? Like a whole new generation of people. And it's crazy because like Coach Prime is like pop culture. You know what I'm saying? And like all the things that come along with it, the swag, the glasses, the things that come out of his mouth, right? The we come in stuff like that. So it's I know there's people that don't like it, and that's fine. But I think it's great, man. Like it's refreshing, it's new, it's different. And it's not the old stuffy establishment that like we've kind of been used to in college football.
Nope.
And I enjoy that sort of thing. Let's shake it up a bit.
I agree. And also, these shades are like awesome. They're comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, and also, if we get aggregated and I'm wearing these, that's like the best thing ever. Because if anybody didn't like the show already, they're going to look at this and be like, what the hell's up with this guy? Like this guy. But by the way, we are live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on X right now because X can now make comments through the streaming platform that we are using. So no matter where it is that you are watching, we thank you. And we hope that you enjoy this last episode of 2023. We've had quite the year, my man, I think. We started the year off still kind of figuring out our way as a show, as a tandem. And I think if you look back on a year ago today, we are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were. And I think it's been an awesome ride. And maybe we're not to the goals that we thought that maybe we would be by the end of the year, but we have grown, and we have grown as friends. And to me, those are the things that are important. So I have been extremely happy to be on this journey with you. And I can't think of a better co-host for me to ride this out with.
Oh, man, I couldn't agree more. It's been great. And, yeah, thinking about how far we've come, right? So, it started where we did an episode together. You were with me and Ryan on Pub Time, and then we did the episode about college football, and like restructuring college football and all that stuff, which was awesome. And it just turned into like me co-hosting on Drippin' Sports, and then Iceman and Coach was born, and when I went from doing it at Ryan's house after recording Pub Time most times, and then to in my dark corner here in the basement, and now I've upgraded my situation here, which is much better. Um, you've taken on upgrading the production of the show. We're doing live shows now, so a lot has changed, and it's all been for the better. I would say if there's any, I mean, we both agree that life happens, but if there's anything we would probably change, it's just that we wish that maybe life would be a little more accommodating sometimes to some consistency. But we both have young kids and full-time jobs and wives and lives, and so that makes things difficult.
Yeah, and those things will work themselves out, to me, in my opinion. So we're just going to keep doing what we are doing, bringing you the content that we like to bring you. And as far as last shows of the year are concerned, we'd be hard pressed to have a more packed one because we have a lot of things happening over the course of this weekend. Right now, I believe it's the Cotton Bowl on, and to nobody's surprise, it is 3-0 Ohio State late in the third quarter, or excuse me, late in the second quarter. I said that this game was going to be low scoring, so it is living up to those particular expectations. But we also have the college football playoff and the New Year's Six slate coming up, and so we're going to start off with that. We are going to have our guest picker up here at some point in the next 10 or 20 minutes to make some picks. Spoiler, he will be picking the college football playoff, so we have something to look forward to as we go along. But we've got the playoff coming up, and so all this hoopla that we talked about Florida State. Everybody's been talking about it ad nauseum over and over and over again. You know my thing. I think bowl season stinks because it takes us so long to get to this playoff, and now we're finally here. And so the Rose Bowl, we have Alabama and Michigan. And Michigan at this point in time is a 2-point favorite. So in my mind, it is a very, very even matchup, or at least that's the way that the money is trending. And it's the most intriguing matchup to me because of all the things that are coming in with Michigan, Alabama, and the controversy of getting in, although you and I both don't think that's controversial. And it's at the Rose Bowl. In my opinion, I'm glad it's at the Rose Bowl because these are two blue blood programs that have a lot of history in the stadium and the bowl that has a ton of history. So this is the one I'm looking forward to most for sure.
Yeah, it's about as neutral of a site, right, as you could get for those 2 programs, and it's no doubt because I believe Michigan, being the number 1 seed, got to choose if they wanted to go to the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, I believe, and, of course, like, you don't wanna play Alabama in New Orleans, like, that's a no-brainer. So, yeah, I think it's gonna be, the perfect neutral site, and it is. I mean, what 2.5? Is that what you said? 2.5 points? 2, 2.5? I mean, that does seem about
Two.
right. Okay, so 2 points, that seems about right, and, I think there's a lot of people that expect Alabama to win this game. Just and I think a lot of it is just based off reputation, history, Nick Saban. I think that has a lot to do with it, especially if you give Nick Saban, a month plus to prepare for a game. That he has been very successful in those situations. Um, Other programs may find it more challenging to keep a team focused for that long. But I mean, Jim Harbaugh is not a rookie, right? The guy's been around. He's been doing this for a long time. They were in the college football playoff last year, and they have something to prove, right? Because after what happened to them last year at the hands of TCU, they have a lot to prove coming into this game. And what better way to do it than beating, you know, probably the best program of the last 10, 15 years consistently. I mean, that's a way to kind of get that monkey off your back and really kind of say, all right, like we're for real, we're here, like we've dethroned the yeah, Georgia's won a couple in a row and they've been good, but like Alabama's been the big guy on the block for a long time.
Serious question. Is Alabama getting too much credit because of their history coming into this game?
Uh, Probably. Um,
Like that's fair, right? Like it's
yeah,
because a lot
yeah.
of people are just automatically assuming Alabama and not discounting Michigan, but I think the aura and the mystique of Alabama and all the championships in Saban are coming with them when it's an even matchup, in my opinion. These are two very talented football teams, but it's not as if Michigan is coming in as slouches. So I just wanted to know because I feel like that's why the money is so tight on this because everybody's assuming it's Saban, kind of like Bill Belichick.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was thinking about this as I was reading through the notes earlier and preparing to talk about this. All year, I feel like the narrative was that, hey, there is not a team in the country that's just like head and shoulders the best team. But I'm like, you know what? Like Michigan kind of was. You know what I'm saying? And I know that they only beat Ohio State by 6, 30-24, but that game was never in doubt
No,
at any point in time.
no.
They controlled that game. So I I feel like they were the most consistently dominant team all year long. We didn't see them we didn't see them falter against lesser opponents and have to sneak away with a last minute victory. We saw Alabama do that just as recently as the Iron Bowl, and
Couple times
a
actually.
couple other times, yeah. And you can say that about, not to jump to the other semifinal, but Texas certainly played their fair share of close games that against lesser opponents they had to find a way to win. Now I think they finished the season pretty strong and in dominant fashion, but and even Washington, because I remember we were talking towards the end of the year, we felt like Washington looked tired, like
Mhm.
is the grind getting to them a little bit. But then as soon as we're starting to think that maybe they're losing steam, they go out there and just smack Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. So, but all these other teams have been sort of in those types of games where they haven't brought their best effort and had to find a way to win late. And there's something to be said for that. For being in that situation and having to overcome that adversity. I don't think Michigan's really faced that adversity, but I think it's also one, they didn't play a very strong schedule, but it's also because like I think they're really good. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing, right? So we talked about Florida State 2 weeks ago, and we said that the ACC schedule was weak. And I think that's fair. The ACC schedule was weak comparative to the other teams that are in there. But I think that you can't really knock a team for who they play solely. I think it comes down to how do they look against the teams that they play. And we debated Michigan way early in the season, and we both were on the same page of they look like a boa constrictor. They're not going to wow you early, but they're going to suffocate you late. And they never had a game where it was really in doubt, to the point that, remember, against Penn State, they ran the ball the entire second half because they knew they were so much better than Penn State, who's like the number 10th ranked team in the country. So that to me was a measure of Michigan being good. Whereas you had Florida State, who went undefeated, same as Michigan, but they struggled in some games that I don't think Michigan would have struggled in. There's no way that Michigan would have struggled against Boston College. There's no way that they would have struggled against Louisville. Michigan would have taken care of business. Florida State didn't take care of business. And so Michigan, I think, maybe doesn't have it on paper when you look at the numbers next to the teams that they have on their schedule, you know what I mean, the rankings. But as far as the way that they played, they dominated everybody, including Ohio State.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, let's be honest. What kept Florida State out was the fact their quarterback was injured. Like
Yeah,
that's literally the only thing. If now it would have been really interesting to see what they would have done had he been healthy and they won the ACC title game in dominant fashion. Um, it would have been interesting to see how they would have handled that. I also think that had Georgia won the SEC and Florida State that quarterback doesn't get injured, I think that Texas is probably sitting at home in that case. You would have had four undefeated conference champs, and and we would have been on with it at that point. I would have been in that case. I do feel like it would have been pretty cut and dry. Texas could have made an argument, but I don't think anybody would have really protested if they were left out for those four teams under those circumstances. But you can't tell me that, like, I'm sorry, but and not to rehash the Florida State thing, but like they're not the same team at all.
I agree.
And they have a great defense and stuff like that. And there's a lot of other good players on the team. It takes 22 guys, to make it go, but they don't belong in this field.
No, but speaking to this game specifically, you have two head coaches who have been there. Jim Harbaugh has been to a Super Bowl, has been a couple of passes away from winning a Super Bowl. Obviously, Nick Saban is well prepared, even hiring what was the former linebackers coach from Michigan. So there's a lot of gamesmanship happening here. I honestly think the linchpin for Alabama is going to be Jalen Milroe. Which Jalen Milroe do we get? He has looked great in the second half of the season, to the point where he had that 4th and 31 play against Auburn. Auburn had him dead to rights, and Jalen Milroe found a way to win. Milroe has ascended, in my opinion, from the way that he looked. He got benched in the South Florida game, and has just continued to put up numbers and numbers to the point also where he was almost a finalist for the Heisman. Can Michigan stop that? Can they neutralize his skill set? And also on the other side of it, if they can't, and if Alabama can actually score some points, can Michigan match that? Because that is one thing I think you could say about Michigan is they are not high flying, dynamic offensively. They do what they do really well, but when it comes down to a shootout, let's say, can they keep up? This might not be that kind of team. I don't know. And I think that Jalen Milrow, the Jalen Milrow that we see or that Michigan can hold, I think that's where they're going to get their most bang for their buck. Just me personally.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't think that Michigan's defense is gonna let it be a shootout. I don't anticipate that. I anticipate a low-scoring game, but I don't know I don't know. It's very interesting because it is, sort of contrasting styles, and you're right, like, Michigan hasn't they're not high flying, they don't look flashy, they just grind people out, and that's what works for them. But one thing I think Alabama's gonna be able to do that other teams haven't been able to do this season is match their physicality. And so it will be interesting to see what happens when another team that can stand toe to toe with them. Not that Ohio State couldn't, but Ohio State this year, their offense had, outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, they really struggled. And so I think to see the explosiveness that Alabama has on offense, how Michigan handles that, and then just the matchup, cliche in the trenches, up front, the physicality, to see how that goes because no one's really been able to, like I said, stand toe to toe with Michigan from a physicality standpoint, and Alabama will certainly be able to do that.
They will. And the other interesting aspect will be if Alabama jumps out to a lead because we haven't seen Michigan play from behind all that much. I mean, sure, they've given up the 7 spot early and then come back, but I'm talking about what if Alabama comes out there and is up 10 nothing, 14 nothing, something like that. Michigan is not a team that is used to playing from behind. So that'll be an interesting narrative from a coaching perspective is Jim Harbaugh getting these guys ready because look, they both have seen everything. Saban has definitely seen everything. He's seen his team have to come back. He's seen them have to grind out a win against a lesser opponent. And I do think that that builds some character with your team. Sometimes when you're a front runner or you're ahead all the time, you don't get to have those moments where you really have to dig in, right? You really have to find out what the intestinal fortitude of your team is. And I think Saban kind of knows that. I'm sure that Jim Harbaugh knows that as well, because you could make the argument that without him in those last 3 games, that maybe they had to test themselves in that way. But I'm talking about just the same thing we said about Colorado against TCU all the way back at the beginning of the season. What happens if they get punched in the mouth? May not happen, right? We may not actually get to see it because they haven't been punched in the mouth yet. How do they respond? These are the things I think we're going to see in that feel out period in the first quarter. That's going to be very telling. But I agree with you. I see 21-17, 21-20, something like that as the final score of this game. Traditional old fashioned college football.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for playing in those games, right? Those games where you don't bring your A game and you got to find a way to scrap out a victory late. You build confidence in those moments, and overcoming that adversity is really beneficial over the course of a season because your team is like, if you end up in that situation, like, hey, we've been here before, we found a way to get it done, so they don't panic. Where it'll be interesting to see if Michigan finds themselves in that situation, how do they handle that adversity? Do they panic a little bit and try to force it too much? Or do they press a little bit, or do they just settle in, stick to what they do best, and get themselves back in the ball game? But I think they've also faced some adversity this year with the noise off the field. I think, and they've shown themselves to be able to stay focused and take care of business despite everything that's been going on around that program for the last couple of months. So, maybe that's not an issue for them.
No, and that's a sign of a well coached team, also. It's disciplined enough to get those distractions out there and actually use them as a catapult to continue to beat up on their opponents as they get the job done. I mean, Michigan got the job done, period. And they are where they are because they deserve it. So I'm looking forward to that one. On the other side, in the Sugar Bowl, of course, Texas and Washington. So Texas is a 3.5 point favorite as we are talking right now. That still surprises the hell out of me. And as you've always said, if you can't believe it, it's probably believable. But Washington is coming into this game. They look tired to us, but they gave Oregon everything that they had and responded in that game. And they're coming in as an undefeated Pac-12 champion with a Heisman finalist, and nobody's giving them any respect. I have not heard anybody talking about Washington really outside of maybe people that have been talking about them all year. But is Washington getting disrespected?
I could tell you this, man, from what I've seen from Washington over the last few weeks of the season, they wouldn't have it any other way. You know what I mean? I guarantee you they love this. If I was Texas, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, "This is the last thing you need is giving them a reason to have a chip on their shoulder." Because I would say this, I mean, at no point in time this season do I feel like Washington was feeling themselves a little bit. You know what I mean? They seem to stay very grounded, throughout the entire season, and so it's I just think, there is something to be said for bulletin board material and things like that, and there's certain coaches that use it very well, and, that is not a team I would want to give any extra, motivation to at this point in time, because there's no noise, man. There's no noise coming out of Washington right now, nothing,
No,
and, I mean, all the noise is kind of around these other programs, and they have bigger, more national fan bases, and that's a big reason why. But I think they love the fact that they're flying under the radar a little bit. They're not getting any credit, being disrespected. I guarantee you that's what's being said around the Husky program is there's a lot of disrespect. So I mean, I like them. I like watching a lot, and I think I mean I personally think they're going to win that football game.
is this another one where Texas is getting the nod because they're Texas and because they have a history and because, let's face it, man, nationally, the media and the NCAA wants Texas to be relevant again. I think Texas does move the needle. Obviously, the celebrity connection and with everything that they have going for them. I don't think Washington does that. And I'm not saying that to slight them. I just think that when you talk about areas of the country that people who are making money off of this sport care about, the Pacific Northwest generally doesn't rate in the same way. Texas is a highly populated state, excuse me, a highly populated state. The University of Texas is, of course, a very wealthy university. They've had a tradition, they've won national championships, and they're back now. It's kind of like the New York Knicks in the NBA. The commissioner's office would love it if the Knicks were good every year because that would be amazing having a New York market there. Washington isn't that. And I feel like Texas is getting the nod when we're not looking at this objectively. And it's like we don't win you don't win the national championship on paper or just by your reputation alone. You got to go out there and do it. Their football team has done it. But man, so is Washington. It's just a little crazy to me that it's like the money has not really shifted toward Washington at all.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy, honestly, and you're right about just the kind of dynamic that exists between those two areas of the country. And I thought I heard at one point in time something along the lines of, and this is crazy with knowing how much big business there is in Texas, but that the Texas football program alone, not the university, the football program, like if they were a business, they would be one of the highest like revenue generating businesses in the state of Texas, which is just mind blowing to think about how much money is around that program. And when you think about that, though, it's also like, gosh, like all that support, all that money, and you've been pretty pedestrian for the last 10 years. So, no, I do think you're right. The media really wants to see Texas be good, be back. And maybe that has something to do with this, but the thing is, Vegas doesn't play into that crap. Uh, I think that they want equal money on both sides, and maybe they think by favoring Texas the way that they are, that it's gonna get a lot of money to come in on the Washington side of things, to maybe try to even things up a little bit. So, again, man, that's one I might have to jump on truthfully because I believe in the Huskies, man. I do.
You are a believer in the Huskies, and I don't blame you one bit. Now, is kind of like a neutral site game. It's a little bit closer to Texas, so it would not surprise me if Texas fans traveled a little bit heavier, or at least maybe in the resale market. But I think the other thing to watch in this game is you have two, I don't want to say inexperienced head coaches, but this is not like the Rose Bowl, where you have two guys that have been to the pinnacle in this sport. You have two guys who are trying to go out there and prove themselves, right? And Sark has obviously been on Saban's staff, so maybe you could give him a little bit of a pass there. But this is the big time. And for both of these coaches, I feel like you're not going to see like an experienced guy versus an inexperienced guy. Both of these guys are kind of in the same boat, in my opinion. And so hopefully that will make there will not be an advantage or disadvantage on either side in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's probably more pressure on Sark, just around that program in general. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think he's handled that well, seems to be handling that well, anyways, publicly. So I don't know that that'll be much of an issue. But um, yeah, we kind of have a tale of two different matchups when it comes to the coaches. In the Alabama Michigan game, we have two more experienced guys that have been around the block that have been in high stakes games and made, Jim Harbaugh from a player in the NFL to a coach in the NFL, a coach at Stanford, winning some big football games. Obviously, what he's done in Michigan so far, uh, that guy's not going to be shaken um, by Alabama or Nick Saban, and that doesn't rattle him at all. And Nick Saban certainly isn't going to be shaking in his boots at the thought of playing uh, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. So,
No.
but then again, not that uh, Texas or Washington are scared of each other, but definitely uncharted waters for both of them. I mean, both of them have been nationally relevant programs in the past, but it's been a while. And so for the people that are involved in those programs now, the coaches specifically, definitely some uncharted territory.
Question for you. What is the team in this field that has nothing to lose? Is it Washington?
Yeah, I would say so because no one's gonna say anything bad about them if they lose. If they lose to Texas, there will be no negative national narrative about them or whatever. I don't think where I think everyone, if Alabama loses, it will be, well, see, they shouldn't have been there. Especially if they lose big. If Michigan loses, it'll be, oh, they're frauds, they didn't play anybody, and if Texas loses, it'll be the whole like, well, Texas still isn't back yet. And again, the argument that maybe they shouldn't have been included.
So, which is the team that is under the most pressure?
Oh boy, um,
It's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
that is a super tough one because I think that there's pressure at those other three places. It's just different. I don't think Jim Harbaugh really feels any pressure
I don't think so either.
because that dude could just hop to the NFL anytime he wants to, type of thing, and he may do that after this season. I think he'd like to get a national championship for Michigan, but he himself, I don't think necessarily feels the pressure of having to win the national championship. Saban doesn't have anything to prove to anyone, really.
Wait
Um,
a minute. That's the one I want to talk about because we talk about boosters a lot on this show, and Alabama hasn't won a national championship in how many years now?
sure, but I mean, let's go back to the after the South Florida game. If
Sure.
someone told you that Alabama was going to be in the college football playoff and that there's a good portion of the country that expects them to win that game, I think we both would have. I mean, knowing Nick Saban, we would have had to acknowledge that it was a possibility, but like we both would have been like, not a chance. You know what I mean? I don't think either of us would have anticipated that football team we watched the first few weeks would be um, in the college football playoff. So I I think what he's doing with the team he has and the improvements that they've made over the course of this season, I don't think that. I mean, I think he's playing with house money a little bit.
It's possible, but if we've learned anything in 2023 and later on we're going to do a little year in review, nobody is safe because Bill Belichick is fixing to get fired. So you never know. And that'll be interesting because I kind of wonder how many years do they give Saban if he doesn't make it to the top? And I think Texas is under a lot of pressure because they need to prove that they're back. I think if they make it to the national title game, that's good enough. But I think that Nick Saban may be under more pressure than people think. He's aging. He's in his 70s now. It's going to have been 3 years since they won a national title. So I think that there are some interesting elements to this Final Four that could play itself out depending on how things roll. But I'm excited for all four of the teams. I'm excited for both matchups. What I'm not excited about is the start times. And yes, call me old, but an 8:45 start time on a Monday. Can we do a little bit better than this? We have the entire day. It's New Year's Day. Can we get it a few hours earlier? I mean, in theory, it's a holiday. So people in the Pacific Northwest should be not working. So can we get an earlier start time? That's all
I
I'm asking.
agree, man. I agree. I wish the games were. I get they're not going to go up against the NFL, I guess, on Sunday. I wish they were tomorrow, man. Like tomorrow night would be perfect. But yeah, I'm not a fan. Like even the national championship, they usually play on a Monday night, and I think that kind of sucks. Just because it usually goes late, and I got to work the next day. I'm just not as like I'm not in that like weekend carefree frame of mind on a Sunday night when I got to work on Monday or whatever. If I've got to go to work the next day, it's just the vibe's totally different. And
Yeah,
It's
you
just
feel
like
like
the day.
stressed almost. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
not
a
like
little bit, I guess. It's just yeah.
antsy.
Yeah, I just I had that looming, and I don't dread going to work by any means. I really enjoy my job, but, like, it's, uh it's just I know that, hey, there's this responsibility that's sitting out there that's few hours away or whatever, and, to where, just I enjoy the carefreeness of a Friday night or Saturday, or just any day where I don't have to go to work the next day, really, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So lots to look forward to there. Now, well, there's also the New Year's Six Bowls. That's what they call them, but like they're not all on New Year's Day. But Orange Bowl is the one everybody's going to be looking at. I think Georgia, Florida State, because Florida State fans want to win this game so that they can stake claim to the national championship. And obviously, Georgia has something to prove to say, hey, we should have been in the playoff. Georgia right now is a 20-point favorite as of right now in this game. Now, Georgia lost a lot of kids to the transfer portal, but they're obviously going to have one of the best recruiting classes coming in. I know a lot of people were making a big stink about that, but look, there's always going to be turnover in today's NCAA football. Always going to be turnover with the transfer portal, but it's recruiting, and obviously the transfer portal is going to bring kids into the program. So I don't think Georgia is going to be in any way starving for talent at all. But Florida State has something to prove, but they're going to be obviously without their best receiver who has declared for the NFL draft, and they're going to be without their best quarterback. And so I think this is going to be a slaughter. And Florida State fans, as much as you want this, I just don't see this being close. I see Georgia putting a nail in that coffin in that conversation and saying, we're the ones who actually got robbed. What do you think?
So, first of all, I mean, we have 2 programs that don't wanna be there. They do not wanna be playing this football game.
True.
That being said, though, I do think, yeah, there's the motivation from the Florida State side of finishing undefeated so they can lay some claim to the national championship. And then on the Georgia side, I think there's probably, you know, the way I would be trying to motivate my team if I'm Kirby Smart is that, um, hey, like, these people have been whining and complaining for a month about how they were left out of the playoff. Let's go show them why they were left out of the playoff and shut them up. And I honestly, like, I hope that happens. I hope Georgia beats them by 100. That would make me so happy. Like, I hope they absolutely destroy them. I hope they beat them so bad it sets Florida State football back 10 years.
That's a little mean, isn't it?
I guess.
You're so damn petty, let me tell you that. So I think that the only intriguing thing is how badly Georgia beats them. In the Fiesta Bowl, Liberty and Oregon. Laughing about it on paper is fine, I think, because Oregon is a 16.5-point favorite. Liberty did have an undefeated season, obviously didn't play the same schedule that Oregon did. Bo Nix had a ridiculous season. And hold on, timeout.
Here we go.
Our recruit is here. Yes, astutely pointing out that I do have sunglasses on. It's a gag, dude. We're doing a bit here. Can you
You,
please like stay
you better
because
get him some sunglasses now,
yes, hold
man.
on. All right. So can you sit still, please? James Allen, how are you today?
Good.
Excellent work. So you are up here and you are here to pick football games, are you not?
Yes.
All right. As everybody should know, James is 11-5 this year picking football games. The last time we spoke, he picked the Ravens over the Jags, which was a big W, and much to the chagrin of his Noni and Papa, he picked the Cowboys over the Bills, and boy, that did not turn out in his favor. He has been making picks just randomly, by the way, for everybody to know. Last week, he told me and his mother the Dolphins were going to beat the Cowboys, and I'll be damned if the Dolphins. Yes, I said a bad word. I'll be if the Dolphins didn't beat the Cowboys. So, James, we are here, and you are going to hopefully get 2 of 2 for the first time since picking 2 games. So, are you and Grimlock? Look at the camera. Are you and Grimlock ready to make this happen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, I am going to do what we usually do, and I'm going to read you the names, and then you are going to decide a winner. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Can you say Crimson Tide?
Crimson Tide.
Can you say Wolverines?
Wolverine.
Who's going to win?
Crimson Tide.
Oh, I knew it.
I
I
saw his
knew it.
eyes light up when you said Crimson Tide. I'm like, oh, he knows. He
I
knows.
knew it. Okay, so that's the first one. All right, are you ready for the second one?
Yeah.
Okay, can you say Longhorns?
Longhorn.
Can you say Huskies?
Husky.
Huskies.
Husky.
That's much better. Okay, who is going to win?
Longhorn.
Oh, man, okay. Woo.
gonna have a number 3, number 4 title
Ooh.
game.
All right. So, James, just so you know, you picked Alabama to win and you picked Texas to win, which totally kind of tracks because he does like both saying those state names. All right. So, James, this is a big day. On Monday, these games will be happening and we will be able to report back next week about these games. Is there anything that you would like to say to the viewing audience out there tonight?
Yes.
What would you like to say?
Um. Um.
That's great. That is a perfect way to.
Daddy.
Yes, Daddy. Okay.
Daddy, I think Alabama's gonna win.
Yeah, I know. We've already established that. Thank you very much.
Daddy.
Okay, great. James, thank you so much for coming up here. You and Grimlock, it is well past your bedtime, and it is Mommy's read night. So will you go down there and give your mother a big hug from me?
Mommy, winner. Where's Daddy?
Wow, you're screaming and clipping this
I love
microphone.
it.
We need to get you out of here.
Good
Okay,
night,
buddy.
James.
Hey.
Can you say goodnight to Coach Brad and everybody?
Good night, Coach Bad and everybody.
And Happy New
Good night.
Year.
And Happy New Year.
Okay, buddy. Love you, pal. He's just repeating everything that I'm saying. Okay, where were we? We were talking about the Fiesta Bowl. So,
Yes.
Liberty and Oregon. So, Liberty had an undefeated season. Oregon had Bo Nix, who threw 40 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. However, their 2 losses were to possible eventual national champion Washington. Oregon, 16.5-point favorite. And I feel like this is another game where Oregon doesn't want to be there. Liberty wants to go undefeated, and Oregon and Dan Lanning have to be like, can we please just put these Liberty Flames out of their misery and get out of here?
Yeah, I agree. One thing I think that Oregon has going for them is, Bo Nix is playing in the game. So, he wants to go out on a high note. He's not playing in this game to go out there and lay an egg and lose. Um,
Last
I
college game,
think,
right?
yeah, yeah. And so, um, he's going to be drafted and everything else. So, I mean, he wants to put himself in good standing there. So he wouldn't risk this if it wasn't important to him to some degree. And I think that, Dan Lanning is still trying to establish the culture he's building in Oregon, and going out and losing the Liberty would be a step backwards. And so I don't think, as much as we think these teams, and I'm guilty of it, think some of these teams don't want to be there. I think there are plenty of reasons that I can come up with that these coaches could use to stay motivated and focused. Um, obviously the transfer stuff hurts, but these programs are deep, man. They got deep rosters with 4 or 5-star talented kids. So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. And I think Oregon's going to win. I think Liberty's going to give it their best effort, but Oregon, obviously, the more talented team. I don't know if they'll cover the spread. That's a lot of points. When you expect Liberty's best effort. So, but I still think the Ducks will pull it off.
Oregon just scores so effortlessly most of the
Yeah,
time.
Liberty's not seen anything like that.
No. And this is, as you pointed out, Bo Nix's last audition almost for the NFL in terms of game film. And he wants to go out on a high note. He probably feels like he should have won the Heisman, and he had a great campaign, at least, for it. Or at least he had as good a chance as anybody. Ryan Day is on here. Looks exactly the same, I swear. If this is a reference that nobody will get, but Ryan Day, to me, looks like the toy version of Tim Allen's Santa Claus in the
He
Santa
does.
Claus second movie. He just looks fake to me
He looks
all the
plastic.
time. Yes, he looks plastic to me. I'm glad you got that reference. He just looks ridiculous to me, and he's out here probably saying something about Lou Holtz as we speak. So, the Peach Bowl, Ole Miss and Penn State. This one I don't get. And again, I'm not a betting man, but Penn State is a 4.5-point favorite over a high-octane Ole Miss. And this has to do with players that are not there and there for each of these teams. James Franklin's team obviously was good defensively, but didn't have anything offensively. So this one was interesting only because I know that Lane Kiffin's teams generally like to score as often as possible, and they leave the defense off to the side a little bit. But I was surprised by this spread a little.
Yeah, me too. And this is a case where I think you have two teams that have plenty of reasons to want to win this football game, because they're two teams that are trying to take that next step as a program, and especially within their respective conferences. So I expect to see, a good football game, but I didn't see anything out of Penn State this year that I was really that impressed with. They didn't look great against Ohio State or Michigan, and everybody else in their schedule was kind of meh. And they didn't look great against some of those teams. I think that Northwestern had their backs against the wall at one point in time. And I think they had a couple other tight games against lesser opponents. I can't recall specifically off the top of my head. I think Illinois actually maybe gave them some problems, but
I think so.
um, yeah, the fact that they are a 4.5 point favorite is shocking, especially in a game that's being played, in the South. Granted, Georgia's a couple states away from Mississippi, but I I don't know though, man. Like we talked about, Vegas knows something that most of us don't know. That's why they build all those big fancy hotels.
Yeah, you and I have absolutely no idea what we're talking about. But let me ask you a question. You
Agreed.
talked about two programs that want to take the next step. James Franklin has been there for a while, so I think that his program is probably where it's going to be. As long as Harbaugh and is there and Ohio State continues to be good, I think that they're going to be third wheel in the Big Ten, and you're adding a ton of talent next year. So it's going to be even harder to take that step. My question to you, though, is about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, because Lane Kiffin has obviously shown that he can get to the SEC and build a really talented squad very quickly. I think Lane Kiffin has turned his coaching career around so much from what he was early. But my question, though, is like, how many years are we going to give him before it's like, is he ever going to take the next step? Because this is coming, what, up to his third season, I think, or is this his third season? I can't remember exactly how many years he's been
I'm
here,
not sure.
but he hasn't yet beat most of the biggest teams. He hasn't beat Alabama yet. So when are they going to take that step? That's my question. And like, when can we, as pundits or whatever you want to call us, lacking or less knowledgeable people out here who have opinions, when can we come out and say Lane Kiffin can't take that next step?
That's tough, man, because and if he I mean, I think what he's done so far at Ole Miss is impressive.
I agree.
And plug anybody else in there at Ole Miss and it would probably look very similar. I think that if he's able to do it there, then that's huge. But I think there's a better chance of him moving on to taking a step up to another program at some point in time, and that's when we would see you know, him take that get to that next level, that championship level, if you will. But I know he just signed an extension, and for the same amount of money, he didn't. There was nothing that changed about his compensation at all. He just said, "This is where we want to be. We like you here." I mean, they all say that, but um, it's so I don't know. Maybe that's worth something.
Maybe it is. But I just want to ask you, though, also, he's at Ole Miss, which is in the SEC. What's a program that'd be a step up from there? Because doesn't everybody want to end up in the SEC eventually?
Yeah, like Alabama, probably. Alabama.
Zero way that's
Georgia,
happening.
maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. I mean,
Maybe.
they say, like, let's say that Saban retires after this year. I think there's a lot of people that think uh, that Dabo would take that job. I think he'd take it probably, but, would they give it to him? I don't know. I mean, who would? Who would be on the list for that job? I mean, and maybe we'll get the opportunity to talk about that. We don't have to hash it out today. We got plenty
No,
of more interesting things to
that's
discuss,
right.
but, no, I mean, you're right. It's not some drastic he's not at, like, a group of 5 school, right? Or he's not, uh, at some lower he's not at Mississippi State, right? I would say Ole Miss even is a step above Mississippi State, in the pecking order of college football, and so,
Hmm.
they're there, but he's in the West, right? The SEC West is tough. I mean, the whole SEC is tough, but, you have to deal with Alabama,
Needs more.
LSU, year in, year out, and, that's difficult.
I agree. So, if anybody needs to take a nap on January 1st before we get to the playoff games, Iowa and Tennessee will be that opportunity for you if you are looking to fall asleep immediately. Tennessee is a 6-point favorite here. I think Joe Milton is not playing in this game. I have no idea who's playing for Iowa. Their defense was elite, probably the best in the country, but offensively, I cannot watch this football team, so I cannot imagine this is going to be a high scoring affair. It comes on right before that playoff game. So, like I said, if you're in need of something to inspire you to fall asleep, that might be the game for you. I don't have anything else to add about that. I just wanted to tell that joke and have that little bit there. But, dude, let's have a little homer hour, the last homer hour of the year, because guess what, man? Both of our squads were victorious
Heck
in their
yeah.
bowl game, and both of them put up 40 burgers against their opponents. I think is a good time to be excited. Now, Virginia Tech the other day in the Military Bowl played at Annapolis. I had the opportunity to go. It was pouring. No thanks. Hard pass. I watched it up here from the comfort of my warm room. And Virginia Tech looked good against Tulane. They turned the ball over a lot. It was one of those sloppy games where, the rain and the conditions and everything. But this is a team, man. They're returning everybody next year. They are not losing anybody. as far as I know, to transfers. If it is, it's very, very little. The key players on their team are coming back next year. At the beginning of the season, I was worried, and we talked about whether Brent Pry was going to be given a long leash to make this program work. They finished 5-2. That's how you want to see it done. And can they build on that momentum next year? They're bringing back the entire team plus transfers, recruits. I'm excited for the first time in a while in a season in Blacksburg next season. This could very well be a team that takes a jump in the ACC to 9, maybe even 10 wins. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if Brent Pry can't bring them there, then we can start the question about like the coaching part of it. But all of the building blocks are there. And as you pointed out 2 weeks ago, this preseason game for them, they couldn't have had a better performance. And I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah, they're poised to take a huge step next season, right? It should be the expectation that they take a big jump with everybody back. He'll be going into year 3, coming off of a strong finish this year, and um, like you mentioned, all the pieces are in place, and so the ACC, not traditionally a very deep conference, and obviously you have Florida State and Clemson, but who knows what the future looks like at those 2 places. I know Florida State, a few of them are grouping up to sue the ACC for the grant of rights thing and stuff. So who knows? Florida State
Good
might be in
luck.
the SEC next year.
Yeah,
I
good
mean,
luck.
we have no idea, but um, it'll be well next year too. SMU and Stanford, right, joining the ACC. So,
And Cal, I think, too.
oh yes, yes, you are correct. So that'll be interesting too to see how that goes. But no, I think that if we don't see a significant improvement next season, then yeah, there are going to start being some questions that are going to be asked about his future there.
But exactly what you want to see, right? In the bowl game, you want to see them come out and have
Yeah,
a dominant performance against a team that was without their star quarterback and their star receivers. I get that. But that was an 11-win team. You don't win 11 games without some talent. So I think that was great. I was very excited. Now, Notre Dame today, 40-8 over Oregon State. Oregon State has lost all of their coaching staff. They lost their quarterback. But again, they have players that are there. Notre Dame lost people too. So it's not as if Notre Dame was going there at full strength and bam, you were going to get the full Notre Dame experience. But that's what you want to see, man. You want to see them put up some points. 40 points is kind of a big number for Notre Dame this year, given how conservative they kind of were offensively. So you had to be happy with that.
no, I was happy to see how the game transpired, and you're right. Oregon State has been pretty decimated by the coaching staff leaving and the transfer portal hit them pretty good, but both teams' offenses were pretty decimated from what they looked like a month ago. And like on the Notre Dame side, they only had one starting offensive lineman. They were without their All-American running back. They were without their starting quarterback. They were without their top 2 tight ends. And they were down 4 wide receivers, I believe, from where they were a month ago, and 3 of those 4 wide receivers were like starting wide receivers. I mean, one of the wide receivers they started today was a walk on. So they played Steve Angeli at quarterback, played great, man, played absolutely great, and to the point where, of course, I mean, it's Oregon State. Let's be realistic, and I'm not trying to throw too much shade at them because I know they've been picked apart. But their defense was they had a couple guys down, but their defense was intact for the most part. So was Notre Dame's. I think Notre Dame's they only allowed 2 yards rushing from Oregon State on the day, which was pretty impressive. But no, Steve Angeli had a really good game, and so if they weren't if Riley Leonard was not coming in next year, like I wouldn't be panicking about Notre Dame next year if Steve Angeli had to be their quarterback. Now, just based off that one game, that's all I really have to go off of. I wouldn't be panicking. What I was surprised to see as we were watching the game is I told my dad, I said, "You know what's crazy is," and granted, he's playing with no pressure. He has no pressure on him right now, um, but he seems more confident, more decisive, and more comfortable in the pocket than I thought Sam Hartman looked all season. And I mean, just the dude was getting the ball out in a hurry. He knew where he wanted to go with it. He got it there. Uh, I mean, he put some balls on the money, and I mean, I think he threw 3 touchdown passes. He probably could have had 5 if it weren't for a couple of drops of balls that he put in the right spot. I mean, he played really well. he had a couple nice runs. He hurdled a guy. He lowered his shoulder into a guy. I mean, he's just out there playing, man. Like the dude's got, uh, what I said is, he's got moxie, and so it was fun to see. But it'll be, is he going to leave? He put on a great show. To put some film out there and have an opportunity to transfer somewhere else, maybe to be a starter next year. I think there are some programs out there that would be happy to have him because there's some really good, talented young quarterbacks that are behind him at Notre Dame and currently there and incoming. And the writing's sort of on the wall, especially with Riley Leonard next year. That it's very likely that if he stayed at Notre Dame, he may never start. And the kid's good enough to play somewhere, so we'll see what happens. So, getting that Notre Dame degree means something. So maybe he just decides to stick it out. His great uncle or something played for Notre Dame back in, well, I don't know, they won a national championship. So probably the 30s or
I
something.
was gonna actually say, yeah, like it's a long
um,
time ago.
yeah, but um, no, man, a lot of excitement. It's crazy because as soon as the season ended, they fired their wide receivers coach, which sounds like there was like a very toxic environment that existed in the wide receivers room, and because of that, several players departed, and there was a lot of mending of fences that had to happen, and then as people left, everybody started to panic. But then some of these transfers they've gotten to come in through the portal at skill positions and important positions on the defense have kind of settled everybody down. And then kind of what the cherry on top was Jared Parker got hired to be Troy's head coach, the offensive coordinator, and Notre Dame did what they haven't done, I don't ever, and that is open the checkbook. And they told Marcus Freeman, "You go get your guy. It doesn't whatever it takes. You let us know, and we'll make it happen." And they went and got Mike Denbrock from LSU. He'll be making his third stop at Notre Dame, actually, as a coach. So he loves it there, obviously. And from what I understand, being a private school, we'll probably never hear the real number. But my understanding is they made him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the country. And so, I mean, the guy had the most prolific offense in the country last year, coached the Heisman Trophy winner. And if he can bring just a little bit of that to Notre Dame, especially with Riley Leonard and the skill set that he brings, I think there's plenty of reasons to be excited. Notre Dame's really good at skill positions. Uh, they've got they'll have a young but very talented offensive line. So, looking forward to it. Good finish to the year. Nice to get to 10 wins. And it stings because Oregon State, like we said, poor Budge, man. I know he was there, but they were just Oregon State was a shell of themselves. They had a very good season. That's why everybody's gone because they got hired away or plucked away in the portal and whatnot. But it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it goes. And Notre Dame took care of business. It was fun to see.
Budge will be just fine. He took a picture with Tony the Tiger today as he was in attendance at the Sun Bowl. And,
Speaking of, I got to tell you this.
yes,
Hold
go
on.
ahead. Go ahead.
Tony the Tiger, right? Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. When they won the game, the Notre Dame players dumped a jug of Frosted Flakes over Marcus Freeman.
I don't know if that beats the edible Pop-Tart, but that's actually not too bad. I think I'd rather have Frosted Flakes than Duke's Mayo. That's disgusting.
I saw that. That's just gross, man.
It's disturbing. It's really disgusting. Although Duke's Mayo is actually the only mayo that I like, but I don't want to have it dumped on me in a vat of mayonnaise. That is absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of Budge, though, we are going to have him on one last time, at least to close out this season. I think we're going to have him on probably the week after the national championship game because he's a busy man. He's obviously traveling all over the place, but he is looking forward to coming on and chopping up the season with us and kind of talking about some things he got right, some things he got wrong, probably taking yet another shot at Boston College, which I'm totally here for because that seems to be his nemesis. Although I feel like they think that they're getting to him because he was wrong. He doesn't care. And I think that's the best part is he just is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, no matter what it takes, because he knows that he has them in his pocket.
He got added, or tagged or whatever, by their punter.
I think
on
that's
X.
great. That is so great.
That's awesome,
And
man.
the thing is like when I was looking at the responses, because look, we've received some comments on here, and it is what it is. People on the internet are always going to have something to say. But if you want to describe living in your head rent-free, the punter tagging Tyler Budge, and then people being like, who is this Budge guy? Clearly, he has made enough waves where somebody on Boston College is pissed off enough to tag him on Twitter. So, like, he's doing something right. This is how you get people to follow you on social media these days is you have to make an impression. And if somebody on Boston College cares enough to tag him, he is in your head, folks. Tyler Budge is in your head, Boston College fans, and there is nothing you can do about it.
No, it's wonderful, man, and he
Love it.
gets it a lot worse than we have at
Oh,
this point. He has a much bigger following and much larger presence, online, and then that's why.
yeah,
And he's talking about, I mean, yes, we talk about sports, but he has very informed but strong opinions
sure.
about almost every college football program, and every passionate fan base out there is gonna defend their team, and that's what they do, as delusional as you can imagine. But no, I think it's funny some of the comments that we get sometimes, the critical ones. I get a kick out of them, because it's just, people think this is like our job, right? A full-time job, and like we have this obligation to be perfect. And it's just comical that it, I honestly I take great joy in the fact that we've gotten us under somebody's skin. We've caused enough of a reaction that they've taken time out of their day to craft some sort of a response to the things that we say. And they're not all bad. We get positive stuff too,
Oh,
but
sure. I mean,
or
I'm,
just
I'm
generally engaging things. But the critical stuff's great.
oh, the critical stuff is really good because it's like it's not easy to do this stuff, right? It's not easy at all. I mean, it takes time. It takes time away from other things that we could be doing. And we're not journalists. I think that's the part that kind of gets me, right? Is like we're giving our opinion, we're giving our analysis, but it doesn't mean anything. I say this a lot on Fire Footwear, which is my sneaker podcast, right? Where I'll give like, okay, I did sneaker of the year recently, and I said, this is a subjective list. It's the 5 best sneakers of the year to me. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't really matter. So what the hell does it matter what I care about this? But people put so much stock into these things that it's fascinating, right? And we did a video flashing the leather with the Otani contract situation. And one of the guys' comments was, did you guys just crawl out of a rock 2 weeks ago? Well, the video was filmed 2 weeks ago. So that does kind of make sense that we're giving information that's 2 weeks old. Because guess what? We don't have a production crew that's putting this stuff together. Shit happens. That's kind of how it works. So I'm here for it, man. I'm here for the criticism. I'm here for everything. And that's kind of why I'm wearing the sunglasses today. That's
You,
why I said, new year, new us.
yeah, you know what's also great about it is that, like, of all the things out there in the world of media, of all shapes and sizes, we are the people that these individuals have chosen to hold accountable,
It's an honor,
for our words and being
privilege.
accurate and correct about things. It's like there's a lot more like worthy causes you could be like advocating for out there. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
What is it that Jack Nicholson said? Deep down at your parties, you know, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. That's how
That's
they
right.
feel about us because they can't handle the truth.
That's
And
right.
that's right. So let's move on to the NFL, my man, because college football is fixing to close. We are heading toward the playoffs. I'm footballed out at this point, and I think that this show has definitely added to my fatigue on football because the NFL season still has 2 more weeks to go before we get to the playoffs, but we are getting there. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Denver Broncos. Oh boy, I don't even know how to describe this situation. So I've been critical of the Denver Broncos the last couple of seasons. Nathaniel Hackett was a hack at best. They bring in Sean Payton. They look terrible. They give up 70 points to the Dolphins, but they kind of put some things together, right, as the season went on, and they've looked really bad the last couple weeks. So today they informed Russell Wilson, or at least publicly informed Russell Wilson this week, that they're going to bench him for the last 2 games of the season. And we both know that they're doing that because they probably want to move on from him and get something from him. And that's what it was as I was writing the notes for this show earlier today. I have since come to learn that apparently after they beat the Chiefs, the Broncos asked Russell Wilson to restructure his contract and take a pay cut, or else they were going to bench him for the rest of the season. They knew they wanted to move on from him a long time ago, and they still stuck him out there and put his body at risk and all these different things. And he's walking away from Denver with a crap ton of money, so I don't really feel bad for him in that regard. But the Broncos are on this short list now for me of worst managed organizations in all of sports. Do you agree?
They're certainly up there, man. Like, because ever since like Peyton Manning, that that franchise has been just slightly above dysfunctional. Uh,
And they lucked
and
out with Peyton Manning too, right? Because they got 2 good
100%.
years, and then they won that Super Bowl when he was not Peyton Manning.
Right. And yeah, and they had a great defense.
Yes,
And so,
100%.
uh, yeah, I mean, think of the quarterbacks that they've had in there since Peyton Manning. I mean, the list, it's a long, long list of very mediocre football players.
And one of them just started for the Jets this weekend, Trevor Siemian.
Yes, I mean, and just, like, shockingly terrible. Like, like, it literally, when they made some of these draft picks, I mean, I think that everyone just could agree that they were like, everyone was confused at why they were it's like John Elway, right? Because I know he's still involved, and, is, John Lynch is no, John Lynch is with the
San
49ers,
Francisco,
sorry.
yeah. He's doing a
Uh,
lot better.
yes, absolutely. So, I mean, John Elway, it's almost like he thinks he knows something about quarterbacks that nobody else knows or
He
something. Like,
does not.
he's trying to be, like, cute about it, and, like, sorry, like, you're not a genius for bringing in Peyton Manning, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't say anything about your ability to evaluate talent, and you tried to capture that magic again with Russell Wilson, but, we started to see his decline, and not just on the field, but just, like, the shit that was happening around him was
The
starting
bad
to cause.
teammate stuff.
Yeah, it was starting in Seattle. And look at the Seahawks. They seem to be doing just fine without him. And with a guy that most people would agree is a lesser talented quarterback. I mean, at least overall. And they're hanging in there. So um Geno Smith is probably a better teammate, I would guess. Um
Yes,
but
'cause Geno Smith tweeted free Russ. Okay, so they were teammates. Remember, he was his backup
yeah.
for a while. So Geno Smith is a better teammate. He's a better team player, but I still think that Russ kind of got treated crappy here because I feel like they did not treat him professionally. It was classless, in my opinion, the way that they have gone about this stuff. Like, the guy wins a football game for you, and you're like, hey, man, take a pay cut or else we're going to bench you. That's like extortion.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm not like crazy about Russell Wilson, so
I'm not
I'm
either, but
happen to
like,
like.
I'm not either. But imagine if you're at your job next week and they're like, hey, Brad, great month last month. Take a pay cut for me, please, or else you're out.
There's places that do that, man. They're like, "Hey, like, I mean, you have to take a pay cut, or we're gonna have to let you go." Um,
If
I
you're if you're one of the highest paid employees, I get that, right? But in football, right, they traded this guy and then they signed him to this extension. The Broncos have nobody to blame for this
yeah,
situation but themselves.
poorly managed situation for sure. Do you think Sean Payton is regretting walking away from doing TV to take that job?
No, because I think okay, this is a good one here.
Man, you're on
Sean
your
Payton,
soapbox. Let's go, man.
Sean Payton is one of the most egotistical coaches in the entire NFL
Wow.
because that guy thinks that because he won one Super Bowl that he's an offensive genius. It's easy to be an offensive genius when Drew Brees has been your quarterback for the entirety of your coaching stint. We're all giving Bill Belichick the shit because he doesn't have Tom Brady. And yeah, he's not the same without Tom Brady. And I'm going to give it to you, okay? The team has not been good. But Sean Payton won one Super Bowl. He had one Super Bowl appearance. That's the same as Mike McCarthy, who is a coach that we give a lot of shit because he doesn't do coaching very well, right? So I don't want to hear about Sean Payton. And Sean Payton comes out of the booth and he comes on the sideline and he thinks that the game is exactly the way that it was and that he's this guy who's going to come out there, right? And he is going to just reinvent the entire thing and do exactly what he's always done. And the team sucks. The team absolutely sucks. They're undisciplined, and then they treat Russ this way. And again, I'm not a big Russ guy either, but if you want to talk about mismanagement, this is mismanagement, okay? Sean Payton is egotistical, and he thinks he walks on water in the NFL. I don't think that he wishes he was back in the booth. I think that he thinks that everything that he is doing is the right thing because he's that kind of guy.
Yeah, you could be right. I can see that a little bit for sure. He definitely, uh, his success is that's directly hitched to Drew Brees, 100%. And you said something there talking about like Mike McCarthy, right? Everybody, that guy catches a lot of shit, but like, to what standard? Like, what standard who are we comparing him to? Like, who is he falling that short of in the big picture? You know what I mean? Because he's better at coaching football than the overwhelming majority of citizens in this country. You know what I mean? Like he's in the top. He's in the 98th percentile of people who can coach football.
I agree.
or 99th percentile even. Like, who are we stacking him up against?
Okay, so
Belichick? Or, like,
yeah, so okay, right. So this is a very interesting conversation because what happens, right, with a lot of head coaches, the ones that don't get the all-timers are on a different scale. But when you get to coach a guy that is going to unanimously be in the Hall of Fame, all of us agree. Aaron Rodgers, unanimously in the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees, unanimously in the Hall of Fame. Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, as much as I hate him as a human being, unanimously in the National Football Hall of Fame. These are unquestionable opinions, right? And so when we are talking about evaluating coaching, Mike McCarthy gets evaluated differently now because he spent and kind of wasted over a decade with Aaron Rodgers. They won one Super Bowl. They only went to one. They lost in a lot of very important games. And a lot of those losses were because Mike McCarthy's offensive strategy didn't evolve with the times, right? He has an all time great quarterback who can make things happen, who is Mahomes before Mahomes in a lot of ways. That's where he's getting judged. I
hold on.
agree. Oh, go ahead.
Do you think who do you I get Mike McCarthy was the coach, but, like, we've seen how Aaron Rodgers is. We saw what he did when he got to the Jets, bringing in 75-year-old Randall Cobb and, like, bringing in all his boys, right? That like, just because he
Cleveland's
has
so
this
mad
big
about that.
trust issue, whatever, like, he needs these guys that he knows he can count on or that know him. Like, do you think that Mike McCarthy could have just walked in there, one year at training camp or whatever and been like, "All right, Aaron, we're revamping the offense." Like, how do you think that would have gone over?
Well, I think that at some point in time, so when McCarthy got there, Aaron Rodgers had not developed into what he is. But over the course of time, when Aaron Rodgers has won football games for you and done it with the team on his back, I feel like Mike McCarthy could see that things aren't going right and be like, all right, Aaron, what do we have to do to make the offense better? This is where I think that he has failed in that sense. Now, you could say this season that he did that, right? He got rid of Kellen Moore or they didn't retain him, and he's been calling the plays. And the Cowboys offensively have looked a little bit better than they had with Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. I do think the Cowboys have struggled in certain things that is on Mike McCarthy. I'm talking about in the discipline aspect of things and the time management. Those things I think are fair to put on a coach. But I think that if he were to come to Aaron and say, look, what do we have to do? That's one thing that Belichick and Brady did really well up until the end, is they met together every week to game plan together about what they were going to do. I'm not saying that McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers didn't do that, but I think that even a coach with a heavy ego, and Bill Belichick is one of those coaches, to know when you need to get that kind of feedback from the players that are executing this game plan, that's where I think some of these guys struggle. And I think that Sean Payton knew that Russ wasn't his guy and never gave him a shot from the beginning. Mike McCarthy, at least, was smart enough or is smart enough to try and do what he can to maximize the talent that he has. I don't think Sean Payton did that. So that's my long winded answer to what would Mike McCarthy, what would it have looked like if he had done that? I think if he goes to Aaron late in their relationship before like everything had fallen apart, it fell apart because he never did that. He never approached him about revamping. It's just keep doing what we're doing. And then the same thing happened once they got Matt LaFleur in there. They, you know what I mean? Like
Well,
those things I think are fair.
the Packers didn't do much as an organization to get weapons on the offensive side of the
Mm-mm.
football either. Now, look at the Patriots. Most of yeah, they had, like, the years of Randy Moss and stuff like that. Like, there were a lot of nobodies, man, on some of them offenses that, Tom Brady turned those guys into household names, the Julian Edelmans and Wes Welkers of the world, those types of guys. And, the whole running back by committee, you never knew, man. You just I mean, they were running back by committee before everybody else. Like, I feel like they were one of the first teams that really, like, went just fully committed to, like, running back by committee, go with the hot hand or, like, whatever fits the game plan this week. You did not want to have a New England Patriots running back on your fantasy team because you just one week they'd have 17 points and the next week they'd have one carry for 3 yards. And
After Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon was their last
right,
workhorse back who had like 1,700 yards.
absolutely. And so, I guess you could compare those 2 things and say, well, man, look what Tom Brady did with, not a ton of what you'd call big time talent on the offensive side. And, Rodgers couldn't have that level of sustained success. they were consistently pretty damn good though, let's be honest. I mean, just like the Cowboys, man. The Cowboys are still pretty damn good. There's a lot of teams that would trade their last couple of years for the Cowboys last couple of years in a heartbeat, because
Sure.
is Dak Prescott a Hall of Famer?
No,
Right. But they're having a pretty good year.
they are. But we talk about this a lot is there are certain franchises that are elevated. The Dallas
Yeah.
Cowboys are elevated. You do not get to just be Marvin. Well, actually, you do. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I thought
Jason
you don't.
Garrett.
Yes, I was going to say you don't get to be Marvin Lewis with the Cowboys, but you do. Jason Garrett clapped his way to 10 disappointing seasons, but winning Super Bowls is what matters, in my opinion, for some of these franchises, and that's why I get triggered with coaches because we see these guys retreaded all the time, right? And they get credit for the currency that they're bringing with a Super Bowl championship. And I'm not discounting that. But Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy, those were eons ago. They've not done that recently. Bill Belichick would have had that treatment if not for that set of 3 Super Bowls that they won before Brady left town. So there's a decade between Super Bowl appearances, or excuse me, Super Bowl victories for the New England Patriots, right? So the Sean Payton stuff triggers me because, man, and look, okay, he did a lot for New Orleans. New Orleans was a shit organization before he got there, so he definitely put them on the map. So locally, as a Saints fan, I get the worship. But pull yourself out of that, I don't get the worship at all. I don't get it of Mike McCarthy either. And I'm kind of baffled because I'm like, I think personally the Dallas Cowboys would be a legitimate Super Bowl contender if they had a better head coach that was more suited to what that team needs. That's a front runner team right now that can't put it together against the best of the best in this league, and it's because their coach is soft.
But that's also because they have a meddling owner that
Yes,
wants a yes man as the head coach.
as I continue to
And
say yes, I agree.
yes, like they don't have uh that's the reason why they probably never will have like that sort of elite coach or what we perceive as that because um like a Kyle Shanahan. A Kyle Shanahan like doesn't seem like the type of guy that's gonna not that he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's gonna go in there and let Jerry tell him what to do.
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
no,
he's got to be allowed to do his own thing, and a lot of the great coaches, right? I mean, and Jimmy Johnson. Like, I'm pretty sure him and Jerry Jones had a bit of a contentious relationship during that tenure, even though with the Super Bowls, and because Jimmy was a guy that wasn't really going to be controlled a whole bunch, and but ever since then they have had what I would call, like, yes men, you know what I mean? Like, guys that are gonna bow down and kiss the ring.
and guess what? Jason Garrett sucks on NBC's Sunday
He's
night coverage,
terrible,
so
man. He's
that's
so bad.
fine.
He's on every Notre Dame game. He's terrible.
Awful. Moving right along to a better story, though, and we'll see what happens with Sean Payton. I guarantee you he will not be in the league in a couple years because he's going to get his guy in there, and it's not going to work out because the guy hasn't learned anything and isn't a genius. But the Lions, Motor City Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions have won their division for the first time since 1993. This has to excite you.
Oh, I'm pumped, man, and, like, just so everybody knows, like, I was solidly on this bandwagon early last season. Like, I was a
You were.
Lions fan before it was cool to be a Lions fan, and, I have been a Motor City Dan Campbell fan from the start, and I actually saw something the other day where it was Pat McAfee, where he's like, "Man, this guy caught so much shit for his opening presser," and, he showed clips of all these different big time media personalities kind of like being like, "Yeah, this isn't gonna work out, that's not gonna play." But you know what? Like that culture that he was trying to explain in his opening press conference is exactly what he's created. And it's freaking awesome, man. Like, I love it. Like, hey, I thought the whole speech, the biting kneecaps and taking a hunk out of you, I thought it was corny as shit, dude. But like, uh, the guy has people believing, and he's got a team that's just bought into that whole blue collar lunch pail like mentality, and they embrace it. And I mean, come on, what's more fitting for a city like Detroit than kind of that working man's philosophy? And I think that like it's cool because it's probably really strengthened that like bond between the team and the city and everything else. And so I'm really pumped for him, man. And I hope that I'd love to see him go on a nice little run. I think that'd be exciting.
Is this a sign of change organizationally, or is this just an aberration? Because 30 years is a long time to not win your division in a league where the salary cap system is built specifically so this doesn't happen.
Well, the the NFC North is in shambles. I mean, yes, like the closest thing to well, I was gonna say the closest thing to consistency we've had, or we have currently is maybe the Packers, because, yeah, they transitioned from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Matt LaFleur's still pretty early on in his tenure there. So they haven't maybe settled in yet. The Bears are a friggin' mess, and it looks like they're probably going to go through another coaching change, probably another quarterback change. There's a lot of question marks in Minnesota right now. What looked like a really potentially promising season has kind of gone down the crapper after Kirk Cousins gets hurt, and they've had some other injuries. Um,
The
you
Josh
know,
Dobbs things didn't last very long, did it?
no, it did not. It certainly didn't. The next guy that came in, like, he went out and was really good for, what, a game or 2, and then just this last week, I think he struggled quite a bit.
Nick Mullins, I believe, was
Yeah.
a retread from San Francisco. Also, the Tommy DeVito thing is over. We can officially shove him back off. Great.
Yeah,
It's
so
a great I loved all of it. Like there was part of me that wanted it to be better, but I was like the other shoe is gonna fall. He had his Linsanity moment. He basically that's what he had, and his agent capitalized on it as much as he could. And Tommy DeVito is gone, but I hope that this is a sign of change because I think if you look at the Lions now, they're the most stable organization as far as what they have. But I do wonder if they can continue this because it does get harder, right? Like once they win their division, it gets harder next year. You play a
yeah.
first place schedule. And Jared Goff works with what they have, but we have seen signs of this team being not very serious, right? We've seen signs where they have really struggled. And Jared Goff has looked like the Jared Goff that Sean McVay got rid of. So there, I think, are a fun story. I'm rooting for them in the NFC for sure. I'm just a little nervous that when they have to turn over at quarterback, because they're going to have to eventually, that it's not going to look that pretty. And Dan Campbell is going to be another head coach that just gets let go because that's how it works in the NFL, right? With these organizations. I don't know. It makes me nervous a little bit. Maybe I'm getting too ahead.
Well, I don't think we can be too critical of them having, a few games where it seemed like they didn't show up because everybody's had those games this year. The 49ers had a 3-game losing streak. The Chiefs have looked like ass for the most part lately. The Eagles have stumbled, at times. The Dolphins have stumbled. I mean, so everybody has had their moments that we talk about all the time. The margin for error in the NFL is so slim. And I tell you what, is there any other, maybe like a pitcher in baseball might be the closest thing, but is they when they don't have their stuff, you
It's like
can
a
kind of tell right
knuckleballer.
away. But like in the NFL, I feel like it's very apparent very early on if a team has a terrible game plan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
and that's like the game plan matters because like you don't go into every game with the full playbook. You know what I mean? Like, you don't. Like, you have a very specific game plan crafted to attack what you think you're gonna see defensively, and of course, you've got things you can adapt and tweak as they do, uh, but if for some reason you get totally shut down or you see something completely different than what you thought you were gonna saw or what you thought you were gonna see, like you get out coached in preparation, you can't just go pulling shit out of your ass. Like it doesn't work that way. You can't the offenses are so complex, you can't just create a new package at halftime or oh hey, we're gonna go run this package that we ran a month ago, um, that we haven't practiced in a month and because the game plans are so specialized week to week, and it's so apparent sometimes when because you'll see a team like the Bears, man. I watch the Bears where it's like they look really good sometimes, and then they come out and they look terrible, and it's like you can just it's just so glaring that it was just a terrible game plan because it's the same damn players that looked good last week. You know what I mean? And they aren't put in this position to be successful.
No, you're right. But I think when I hear Dave give them some criticism about not being serious when you compare them to the other teams, in the league, it's like I can understand that because there are times in which they don't do things the way that they should given the strengths of their team. But as you said, I mean, when you think about the range of outcomes for any NFL game, a blowout is in them just about every time because it could happen. And even between two good teams, it happens. I mean, the Lions got blown out by the Ravens, but the Ravens are pretty much beating everybody. So it's not as if that was a bad loss in any way. And it's going to happen. The NFL is tough because the talent disparity is so small. But I think this is a good story. They do have an inside track, possibly to the number one seed. They have to have some things go right for them. And a big game will be this coming weekend as they face off against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. So that'll be interesting. So the Browns, too, my man. The Browns are looking to possibly win their division. It's kind of a long shot, but the Cleveland Browns started off for me, this team that I hated because Deshaun Watson, he's out for the season. And all of a sudden now they pull Joe Flacco off of his couch and they're 4-0. They just won their 11th game this season. They're headed to the playoffs. The Browns all of a sudden now are like the Lions. Can you imagine if we get a Lions Browns Super Bowl?
I was
It's
gonna
not
say,
out of the cards.
when's the last time that both the Detroit Lions and Cleveland Browns made the playoffs? I
Ooh,
mean, it's
good
been since it's been an eternity. Didn't the Matt Stafford Lions made the playoffs
couple times.
once or
Once,
twice, didn't they?
maybe twice. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, but the Browns are really terrible. Have been really terrible for a long time. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so just the odds are, I mean, we'll have to look that up later. I'm just curious, but I saw somebody online somewhere say Joe Flacco is Vinny Testaverde. I saw that. It's like
That's a good
it,
comparison.
it is. I think so for sure. Um, and you talk about a guy that he couldn't look more like uninspired or unenthused. They had a clip of him like late in the game. He's sitting on the bench like falling asleep.
Yeah, you know why? 'Cause he has 5 kids. So this is like his alone time.
Right.
He'd rather be at so think about this, right? He has 5 kids at home, and he'd rather be chased by Aaron Donald. Like, that's how hard it is to
That's
have 5
hey
kids at
buddy,
home
I get it. I got two kids at home and 2.5
with your dad.
with my dad around. So yeah, I get it, man. Like sometimes they're vicious.
Speaking of Rick, is he, at a Bradley game tonight?
No, he's in the chat. He's here. He's making his crafty comments there. So,
Ah,
uh,
hello. Yes, okay.
last night he was. The Braves were in action last night against, I
Super.
think Division II Truman State. They won, but they got some things they got to figure out. They start conference play this weekend, and they've got to figure some stuff out, or it's going to be a long season. It's crazy, man. What a difference! Like they start 6-0, and then since then they have been pretty pedestrian.
Well, let's look at the playoff picture real quick before we move on to the year in review that was 2023 as we get close to wrapping this thing up. In the AFC, Ravens, Dolphins, Chiefs, Jags, Browns, Bills, Colts are all right now would be in the playoff field. In the mix still, technically Steelers, Bengals, Texans, Raiders, Broncos. A lot of those are frauds, but I think the AFC playoff picture is actually looking pretty solid right now. There could be a couple of teams that flip-flop, but so far it's looking good. In the NFC, Niners, Eagles, Lions, Bucks, Cowboys, Rams, Seahawks would be your field right now. That actually hasn't changed much from the last couple of weeks. Vikings, Packers, Falcons, Saints are all long shots to make the playoffs. If you're looking for some big time action that is playoff bound, Cowboys and Lions, as I mentioned, Cowboys are a 5.5 point favorite at home. And I think that has to do with Cowboys play differently at home. Lions are not the same team on the road. Dolphins at Ravens is definitely the game of the weekend. If the Ravens win, I think they lock up the number one seed. Dolphins are looking to get to the number one seed, but also to lock up the AFC East. Ravens are a 3.5 point favorite on the road. This is, again, a fringe game. Raiders at Colts. Somebody shoot me, but this is actually a playoff implication game. Colts are 3.5 point favorites at home. Gardner Minshew, man, would this
I
team be
love
where
it.
they are if Anthony Richardson was still the quarterback?
That's so hard to tell, man. We saw the guy play just a few games.
I know
Um,
it's tough being a rookie in doing this, but like maybe they'd be better.
it's possible. It's certainly possible. I mean, I've always liked Gardner Minshew. Like, I don't think he's a
Oh, he's
slouch by any means.
such a coach guy for sure.
Oh, absolutely, man. Speaking of coach guys, I want to say, like, I just want to mention that the entire AFC North, the entirety of the gritty AFC North is in
hmm
playoff contention.
I know. I know. I don't know what's going on. I feel like cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. This is just something that
A
I
lot of good
can't.
football in the Rust Belt, man.
There definitely is. Speaking of not good football, Saints at Bucks. Although I do want to make a very controversial take here. You ready? I've already been on my soapbox, but I'm ready to throw thunder and lightning into the hot take space. Are you ready?
Yes.
Damar Hamlin is not the comeback player of the year. It is Baker Mayfield.
Dude, I love me some Baker Mayfield, man. And I was bummed to see things like not work out for him in Cleveland. And you talk about a guy that's really like saved his career. I don't want to say resurrected because I don't
Not
think
yet.
it was quite
Not
dead,
yet.
but I the dude, the guy plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's kind of, I think he's outgrown some of the immaturity that we saw from him in Oklahoma and even early in his career. And uh he realizes because of his size, he's got to do some things a little differently. And he's learned how to play the game at the NFL level with the tools that he has at his disposal. And, hey, dare I say it, guy's got a little bit of grit to him, and I dig it.
I don't want to take away from the severity of the Damar Hamlin thing, but he has one tackle and he's barely suited up this season. I mean, as a life achievement, it's
Yes.
great that he's on the field, right? Like from that perspective, that's different. Football perspective, Baker Mayfield, far and away the comeback player of the year. Far and away. Baker Mayfield was on that team. Everybody thought the Bucks were tanking. That's why they signed Baker Mayfield. And they could win that division. Now the division's not any good, and the team is mediocre. But Baker is not the reason for their mediocrity. He's actually played really well this season. So that's my hot take. And if you want to get some action, Bucks 2.5-point favorites at home against the New Orleans Saints. Bengals at Chiefs. You said the Chiefs have looked like ass a lot this season. Can Jake Browning win another game? It seems like that came crashing to a halt the other day. And yes, the Chiefs' issues can be fixed swiftly, and we'll get to that in a minute. Chiefs are 7-point favorites at home. I'd like to think that the Chiefs can beat the Bengals back up. You never know with this Chiefs team as they lost to a Raiders team that had absolutely no business beating them on Christmas.
The the dude that's been playing for the Bengals, sorry, don't know your name, guy, but
Jake
uh,
Browning.
okay, yes, you said it just a minute ago.
I did.
He's been
Welcome back.
playing well.
Mm-hmm.
He's kinda got, we've had a lot of these guys this year that have kinda caught lightning in a bottle, and,
Playing with house
um,
money.
yeah, so, um, we'll see what happens, but
Yep.
Chiefs, we'll see, man, they gotta get it together pretty quick.
They need this win. They really need this win. I mean, they're probably going to win their division. They don't scare me at all because
No.
I just don't think that I think they're highly flawed. And
Yeah.
again, I just want to iterate this again because it's like, it's okay if your team is flawed. You've won 2 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. You're not going to have a great team every single year. I still think that the Patriots they had flawed teams. Now those were 10-win teams, but still flawed teams. You're going to have a flawed team every now and again, even with a guy like Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. It
Yeah, yeah.
just is.
Yeah,
And
Chiefs Nation is not handling it well.
no, they're not. And it's like, and I get it, okay? Like there's a period of time where you're on top of the world. And then reality sets in about, oh shit, the NFL is hard. And it is hard to keep a competitive team. And the reason that they are competitive, if anybody else was quarterbacking that team, they would be sub 500. But because Patrick Mahomes is who he is, and he literally gives every part of his body for that sport and that team, that's why they are where they are. But they don't have any like world beating talent outside of Mahomes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and Travis Kelce. I mean,
sure,
he's their best weapon.
sure, when he's getting blown by Taylor Swift. But I'm saying, like, for the most
That
part
seems
here,
to have been detrimental,
maybe it has.
honestly.
I'm sorry. And that was one of the most family inappropriate things I've ever said of this show. But hey, it's true. Okay. My point being, though, is that the Chiefs are flawed, and the fan base is just going to have to come to grips with the fact that when you are at the mountaintop, you're going to be not always the best team in the league. You're going to have to win Super Bowls by gutting out victories because you don't have the most talent out there. It's not always who has the most talent. Not always. And it won't surprise me if the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl, but they are highly flawed.
Yeah, Andy Reid is the only reason that I'm not, like, writing them off,
Mm-hmm.
um, because if there's anybody that can circle the wagons, it's Andy
Nice.
Reid.
Nice. Last game, Packers at Vikings. Again, these are two fringe teams, but Packers are 1-point underdogs on the road against the old Vikings. Jordan Love will be playing. I think he's had a pretty decent, I say rookie campaign, but as far as the first year starting. All right, man. So end of the year is coming up. We have 2 more days left in the year of our Lord 2023. So I put together a few things here just to remind you about things that happened this year because when you get to the end of the year, I don't know about you, I forget about shit that happened in like January, February, March, and I tend to remember everything that happened in the back half of the year because, recency bias. So we already mentioned DeMar Hamlin. Obviously, that was a crazy thing. I've never seen anything like that on a football field. I've really never seen anything like that on a playing surface at all. I mean, there have been players who have collapsed on the playing surface and all that stuff, but this was just one of the craziest things ever. And the fact that the NFL suspended a game, that tells you how severe it was.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like since then, I feel like we've had some instances that have appeared to be not
Close.
as bad, but close.
The Tua
And
stuff last year before all this
yeah, I
was
mean,
weird.
honestly, not to go off on too much of a tangent with this, because I know we got to get through this, but I don't know, like with the way that these athletes are getting bigger and faster and stronger, and you can only legislate safety so much with with the capabilities that these guys have. Like unless you just completely remove contact from the game, which isn't going to happen. Um, there's only so much you can do to prevent stuff like this from happening,
Hmm.
and it's tragic when it does. And but when like we talked about when the incident occurred, there's a lot of people freak out. These guys know what they're signing up for. They know what they are willingly putting their bodies on the line. Trust me, there's nowhere else they would rather be in most cases than out there doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and it wasn't
Um,
football that did this to them, that did this to DeMar Hamlin. It was a
yeah,
random thing, right? He could have been run into by
sure.
somebody running down the street or something like that. But that was something that certainly took the breath out of football for a little bit, but then we quickly forgot about it as we always do. Second biggest thing that happened this year, your boy Messi came to town, came to the US, and obviously as the Messi scholar that you are, we put out one of
Yes.
our most popular videos to date on this, but it really took the country by storm. I thought it was so much fun, man. Like he comes here, he's a superstar. They're parting the Red Sea for this guy. The team stinks without him, but man, they're winning games. And like, as a fan, I would go to all those games just to get caught up in the hoopla. So I thought that was actually one of the most fun stories of the year.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get myself on the whole soccer bandwagon. I know
Yeah,
it's
where's Drew
becoming
at?
increasingly popular. Drew, I'm sure, is going to hold me uh, accountable this spring slash summer to get out to some Peoria City game at some point in time, which I need to do.
Take
So
the kids,
yeah, no, that Carver would probably get a kick out of the
literally.
noise and whatever Drew and all the racket that him and his band of supporters make during the games.
Yes. Another big story, Aaron Rodgers lasting 4 snaps, LOL Jets. But that is a story, my God, did it last forever? I'm so tired of hearing from the guy. And my wife the other day was like, he has been really quiet. And I was like, really? You think being on Pat McAfee every week is quiet? That ain't quiet.
That's just it. I mean, but he was on Pat McAfee before that. It's not like
He
he's
was.
just, I mean, it's because they're buddies. I mean, that's really what it
That's fine.
amounts to. And the guy is, I mean, come on, like the guy is interesting to listen to. He's very polarizing, right? You either
Yes.
love him or you hate him. A lot of people hate him. But what I'll give him, I do respect the fact that he's very him, right? Like he just says what he thinks. He doesn't let public opinion or public perception like sway the way he lives his life, and most people do, right? So, credit to him for being a man of his convictions and as annoying as they may be to the rest of us since they're so public. But uh, yeah, talk about. I mean, things have just spiraled out of control for the Jets since that happened.
Yeah, you hate to see it. Two people who have not had their life spin out of control, the Kelsey brothers, as you mentioned earlier. So Travis Kelsey and Jason Kelsey play each other in the Super Bowl. They have a documentary made about them. They have their own podcast now. And if you weren't paying attention, Travis Kelsey is banging one of the most popular women on the entire face of the planet in Taylor Swift. So they're having quite a year, would you say?
Yeah, yes, they are, and yeah, the podcast thing, it goes a long way. Obviously, they both play on very good teams. This probably wouldn't have the same effect if they played for, uh, I don't know,
Carolina
the
Panthers.
Carolina Panthers and the Falcons or something. I mean, it wouldn't have the same luster. The fact they played each other in the Super Bowl last year, and that's really, I think, what kind of kickstarted everything,
Uh,
because that really put the spotlight on their family, and it just kind of really. blew up from there. And I find them interesting though. I really like Jason Kelsey a lot. Like
They seem
I
like
like
normal
his
dudes.
personality.
I'm
They
not
do.
gonna lie, really, like, this is probably the most dude-like guy that Taylor Swift has ever dated. You know,
Yeah.
like, I get the sense that Travis Kelce farts in front of her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just
I
okay.
100%.
Not that I
And
care, but I
no,
get
but
that
yeah,
sense.
he's they're dude. I mean, he's a dude for sure. Borderline bro.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
very, very close to bro territory. But if it wasn't for that podcast, we would be the number one. So I'm kind of a little pissed about that.
Hey, we are number one in China.
That's correct. As of today, we still are the number one sports news podcast in China. I would love to know what they find enthralling about our show, but it is what it is. You take listens anywhere that you can get. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Florida State getting left out. That has been the whole talk of the town. We're not going to rehash that. Shohei Ohtani had himself quite a year as well. He had a historic month of June. This platform, I&C Sports, trafficked heavily in that and were very successful in it. And he just signed the richest deal in all of Major League Baseball, $700 million for 10 years. I would sign on that dotted line in a heartbeat. He also won the World Baseball Classic by striking out his now former teammate Mike Trout. So Shohei Ohtani has had quite a year for himself. And you know what? Bless him. Go get your bag, my man.
Sure. Is it kind of it's kind of sad that a player of his caliber who is it may be the best to ever play the game by the time it's all said and done is playing in an era where the game of baseball is sort of fading into the background in the national sports landscape.
Did talk about that the other day. For anybody who's interested, my neighbor Jonesy came up here and we did talk about this, and it's posted on YouTube right now. But I said that this is the best thing that could happen in Major League Baseball because they need to compete. They need star power. And this guy has been dying a slow, painful death in Anaheim. I don't care what anybody says. Anaheim is not Los Angeles. It's not, no matter what they call the team, it is not Los Angeles. And the Dodgers are the premier team there. Hard stop. They're the premier team. Major League Baseball is thrilled that he signed with the Dodgers, right? Because this moves the needle. The best player, their most marketable player, is now on one of their most marketable teams. This is a win-win for baseball.
Yeah, he's going to
People
be
will
competing for championships.
sure, and yeah, and they're going to be on prime time. They're going to be possibly in the World Series, almost every year. This is a total win-win for baseball, and a lot of people have been kind of commenting on this video and saying like, there's no conspiracy. Baseball doesn't need this. You're just too much of a baseball homer to realize that baseball does need this. Because as you said, if you did not the prices right, if you did the Family Feud thing and you went out and surveyed 100 people and asked who these baseball players were, not many of them would know who they are. Nobody would really know who Mookie Betts is. Nobody would probably know who Freddie Freeman is, Jazz Chisholm. They know who Shohei Ohtani is, though.
We'll see, but I'll say this: like my wife, like granted, we haven't consumed a lot of baseball, but like my wife knows who. Like if I say Albert Pujols, she would know who I'm talking
Sure.
about. Or if I said, um, the guys, some of the guys that played for the Cubs, the World Series Cubs, even the more obscure ones, Dexter Fowler, John Lester, Jake Arrieta, whatever. She would know those names. If I said Shohei Ohtani, she would be like, "Is he a chef?" Like, she would have no idea. She'd never heard the name. And that's and that may be a product also of playing
Where he played,
in Anaheim, right? I mean,
never
and look,
making the playoffs.
yeah, look, that's like Mike Trout, man. Like Mike Trout would be a much bigger star. Probably make a lot more money if he played in for a team that just competed for championships. It wouldn't even have to be a big market, just a team
He's
where
doing
he
just
played
fine.
meaningful baseball.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a travesty that the Angels had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in their team, and between the two of them, they had 9 postseason at bats, and Mike Trout is the one who had all of those. It's sad. And look, the numbers are in my favor. Texas and Arizona pulled the worst World Series numbers of all time, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. So it's not solely those teams' fault, but it is what it is, right? People are just not flocking to the World Series unless it's the team that matters. So Otani has made that happen. Speaking of all-time greats, 2 of them. Tom Brady retired again. I feel like that was last year, but it was actually in February of this year. So I kind of forgot that even happened. He's doing just fine for himself. Oh, and LeBron James became the NBA's all-time leading scorer by passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And that was, I think, in the spring last year before they got to the NBA playoffs. So a great achievement for two people that are going to go down as some of the greats in their sport. Something that I had forgotten about. A 16 seed beat a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament this year. Starley Dickinson beat Purdue. I forgot that.
Yeah. Yeah, they sure did.
Totally
And,
forgot.
and I'm trying to remember now, their coach parlayed that into a gig. It was at VCU? Is
Yeah, it
that
could
where
have
he
been.
went?
Yeah, very well. That always
Um,
happens, but you love to see that stuff. I love a big upset.
oh, yeah, 100%. But I can tell you this, I love to see it, but I will never have the balls to pick a 16 seed in my bracket.
Never.
Not a chance.
By the way, I was just telling somebody, my father-in-law the other day, that you and I, if we had like a sports trip that we would take together, you and I would be perfectly placed at the first round of the NCAA tournament when our teams aren't in it, and we would be attached to every one of the underdog fan bases as we went along. We would be Farley Dickinson fans. We'd be Bradley, like all these, all these different
Yes.
schools. We would just be a chameleon with all these, and we would just be getting drunk and having a great time with these fan bases. Would you agree?
Oh, I agree 100%. That's the best weekend of the tournament.
Yes,
I mean, say what you will about the Final Four. The first weekend is the best
the
weekend of the whole
best.
tournament. It's one of the best weekends in all of sports,
Yes,
honestly.
as you know, I
And,
agree.
uh, I mean, because it's 4 days of nonstop basketball. I mean, you can turn on the TV basically anytime between, like, what, like, noon and, uh, you know, 10 or 11 p.m., and you're gonna see basketball just constantly, and, just upset after upset and close game that goes down to the wire and, last second shots, buzzer beaters. I love it, man.
Let's see. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark had themselves a moment. Caitlin Clark is still taking the sport by storm. Angel Reese has had kind of a rocky year this year, but that put that put women's college basketball in prime time. It was great. It was a great game. It was a great rivalry. That was a great moment, in my opinion. One of the better ones. I don't think people are talking about enough, and I think that people misconstrued that whole thing. We talked about that, but it was cool to see two women who are great at what they do be highlighted. It doesn't happen too often.
No, it definitely doesn't, but I think it's something that is becoming a little more common, which is good. Um, I know that, just to talk about women's sports in general, women's wrestling is one of the fastest, I think it is the fastest growing high school sport currently in the country. It is, I mean, there are Division I schools that have women's wrestling programs now. Um, a lot of high schools are having women's only teams. So, I mean, it's cool to see a lot of that. Now, obviously, that doesn't get the national attention that, like basketball would. Um, but no, I think it's great, and I mean, it's I almost feel like some of the some of the animosity that came out towards Angel Reese last year has kind of gone to the back burner with some of the other drama that they've had at LSU has sort of like put that out of people's heads a little bit, I feel like.
Kim Mulkey handled that so oddly, in my opinion. Now, she's a kind of a crazy person, as you know, but that was weird. Really, really
Was.
weird thing with all that. And it sounded like to me, she was just kind of burned out. Like that's kind of what it sounded like to me. I'm talking about Angel Reese now. And it was just really odd the way Kim Mulkey handled that. She kind of has I mean, I know a lot of players love playing for her, but I feel like there have been instances where if she doesn't believe in whatever it is you believe in, she's not going to have your back. And it's like it's a weird thing as a coach because usually you like to have the backs of your players. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, she's one of those people, and you see this, I think, more in college than you do at the pro level, that she's a coach who um, it's about her, right? Like she's in her
Yes.
mind, she's the show. You know what I mean? And you're on her team,
Yes.
and so you see that unfortunately, even in men's basketball, it exists and things like that. But um, yeah, so no, definitely a cool story though. As far as two women who are at the top of their sport, being able to to compete, at a high level on the national stage was awesome.
Yes, and we have breaking news. A touchdown was scored in the Missouri Ohio State game, which is just thrilling 7-3 in the fourth quarter. So, in case anybody needs an update on their parlay that they have going on, last three
Dun-dun-dun,
thing,
dun-dun-dun.
yeah, I know, right? Last three things: PGA and Live merger, which still apparently hasn't happened, and golfers are still announcing that they're going to Live. I don't really understand how this is working, but that's something that we talked about. Wembenyama first pick to the San Antonio Spurs, and they are absolutely terrible this year. So some growing pains for Wemby as he comes to the NBA. And this one was kind of polarizing. The U.S. women's national team bowed out early in the Women's World Cup, and this country was very divided on this because of Megan Rapinoe, and we're not going to get into the political stuff or whatever, but I thought it was interesting to see how many people were happy that the U.S. lost in any type of international competition. And that kind of rounds out a lot of the things that happened this year in sports. I'm sure we missed a bunch of stuff. Bradley, obviously, when winning their conference before losing in the conference title game last year. So just a lot of things that happened in sports this year. But if you are watching here or you're listening, 703-718-6314 if you want to call or text any moments that we forgot about that you would like to highlight. All right, my man, this is the last time this year that we're going to do this. So this is your last chance to give any type of parting advice and wisdom as the calendar turns over to the year 2024.
No, it's been a great year of sports, right? This is the first like calendar year that we have under our belts together doing this, which is exciting. And I think that we having that behind us, I think it helps us lay out, a blueprint for the future, and we kind of know what we like to do, what we feel like are decent at or maybe not decent at and stuff like that. So that's fun. Um I think I can't wait for the college football playoff Monday. I think we're gonna have a couple of really good football games, which I'm excited about. And then the NFL playoffs right around the corner. Before we know it, March Madness is gonna be here. And so I mean plenty of stuff to be excited about coming up in the new year. Not I mean everybody hope everybody has a safe and happy uh New Year's Eve, whatever plans you may have. I will be holding down the fort with the youngsters and hanging out. Nothing exciting here, but yeah, moving into a new year, happy about it. Thank you for everyone who's stopped by to hang out with us.
Could not agree more. I want to thank everybody who has tuned in, whether it's audio, video, whatever. You have supported this channel over the course of this year, and we have grown by more than 300 subscribers. We hope that we can have the same kind of growth in 2024. But just to close this out, if you want to find us on social media, TikTok at I&C Sports, Twitter at Iceman and Coach, Facebook, I&C Sports, Twitch, I&C Sports, YouTube, of course, Apple, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And as the flag says, Matty Ice Media Network for all the other podcasts that we have. Hopefully in the new year, we will bring you some more live content. Hopefully Brad will get off of his ass and do a fan-to-fan again for you, and we can have some of that new content coming out this year. But I speak for Brad, and I speak for everybody at the network, everybody at I&C Sports. We thank you for any minute that you chose to listen to anything on this platform, whether it's this, political football, anything. It is something that we can't express, in my opinion, in words. And we just have to continue to show it to you by being consistent and giving you that kind of content. Hope everybody has a happy, safe, healthy new year. Please don't do anything I wouldn't do. I've picked out my sweatpants. I am ready to go to bed before midnight. Hope this finds everybody well. Hope this finds everybody safe. Coach and I will see you in the new year. This is Football Friday.